The Greater Wealth here on Edge Radio Australia. Very pleased indeed to be here because we've got a special guest that we're going to bring up in just a tick. But before, we need to talk to the man with all the knowledge and quite frankly some great advice too. It's Derek Whitaker.
Aaron, it's good to see you, man.
Great
you know how I've been talking about the Greater Wealth, on the Greater Wealth, I've been talking about the whole wealth transfer for the last couple of years.
Oh, look, mate, you've talked about other things, really.
Yeah.
But yes, no, it's been a big thread, I guess, through the show.
So one of our guests today has been an influencer in my thinking on this.
Okay.
And so I'm super excited to actually have him because he's coming to Perth, Australia. Of all the places in the world, it's quite, the most western isolated city in the world.
Most definitely is,
Perth. Yeah. He's coming here. He's from Washington, USA.
Okay.
And the state above Oregon there, and not DC, and it's people get confused with that. But he's coming, and I'm super excited to introduce him in just a moment.
All right.
Let's dive this. Let's just say he's been an Advent student of the prophetic and how it relates to finance and investment. Now you might think, well, what does that have to do? Well, he's a millionaire. He's got the runs of the board as far as wealth creation is concerned.
Always good to see.
So that's something. But he's written a couple of books too. One he's co-authored. The first book he's written is The Parable of the Dinar and Stewarding the Wealth Transfer, a study on Kim Clement's 8 wells. And the one he just brought out, I think it was last year, The Rise of Kingdom Billionaires, he co-authored with a lady called Lauren Atkinson. Now, I've been following both of these on social media for some time.
Right.
And he joins us today on the Greater Wealth. Larry, we are super excited to have you. Welcome, and so excited you're coming to Perth.
Well, Derek, it's been so awesome to talk to you for a few minutes before this interview. And Aaron, I've enjoyed getting to talk to you as well. So I'm excited. I can't wait to go to Perth. I've always wanted to go to Australia, so I had to wait 63 years. But I don't think it'll be my last time, but I can't wait to get to shake your hand. And I'm really excited to talk about. I love the name of your channel, the Greater Wealth. It's a passion of mine. And, that's a kingdom idea. Wealth is not an unchristian idea. I think God is very passionate about wealth, but people do screw it up, though. We seem to serve money and like God, and what we should do is serve God and like money, and kind of get our priorities around a little bit. But I can't wait to hear what you got to say.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you're going to be in the studio next week on the couch with us, so we'll do a part 2 of this, guys. But for now, hey, he's coming in person. We want to talk about the event and that sort of thing and what he's done. You've written, as I've said, books on the wealth transfer and also the prophetic, which for many is an unusual collision of ideas with finance and faith. So let's start with the wealth transfer with its basics. What is it? How do you define it?
Well, I got to tell you, I came in, I'm like one of these guys that wrote this book because I did not believe, I kind of was raised, I was a good Assembly of God boy. I was raised in the church that you don't really talk about money, that God doesn't think about it a lot. He would never direct people to come in to great amounts of money. But I've always been curious about it. And Derek, one of the things that I believe that I think that the church across the world has missed it is I believe we all agree that God calls some people to be pastors, but I believe that God raises up businessmen and women. And there are so many people who, if they would realize that God was calling them and would be the wind at their back to do these difficult things, I think it's time for men and women who have faith in God to believe that God is with them and will help them to accomplish great things, including business, not only ministry, but God will help us with business and media. Here you are in media. It's so important. And the church hasn't thought that's been an important factor either, but it's super important. So I love it that you think about money and that you have taken a place to make your voice known.
It's funny, Larry, because a lot of the church has thought about revival, but they haven't thought about reformation. And there's a distinct difference. And what I'm hearing from you is more about reformation as opposed to revival. Now, these sound like Christian terms to many people.
That's what I'm hearing.
Revival is kind of like awakening the church to, hey, God's moving and we need to get on board with what the Holy Spirit's doing and this sort of stuff. Reformation is more about transformation of society. And I think and Larry, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what you're saying there is the entrepreneur is uniquely situated for that, to change culture.
Well, that's exactly it. I think that, and I don't know the Australian church. I will tell you, I hold it in high regard. I love the music that Australia has produced. I love, we love you. I guess you're an American, Derek, but I love the sound, of the way that you speak. And um, but I think that the church, that Christians don't realize how much God wants to help them. But let me tell you about like the wealth transfer. I wanted to prove that it must be wrong because I was not raised that God would mix prophecy with money. And I did become a multimillionaire and I worked a long time and we lived very frugally relative to our income. And I'll tell you really quick how I did it since you're
Yeah.
As my income rose, we we always continually lived off the same amount of money. I mean, if our now it's not that we never gave ourselves a raise, but say we started making an extra $1,000 a month, we would only live on an extra $100 a month. And
Okay.
so, and then after 5 or 6 years of doing that, we had a lot more money coming in than what we were spending. And so then, we were able to invest it more and more. And um, so the wealth transfer, when I heard about it, I didn't understand the prophetic, and I'm still learning about it. But I realized if God actually wanted people to come into money, and what I'm convinced of, just to summarize it, we've seen an evil world with even satanic people, in my opinion. And there's many people who would confirm that. These are not normal, neutral, average people. They're literally, can I say the word pedophile? You said that this is a free channel. So I think that they even literally, they do satanic things in order to perpetuate their wealth. I think that so many of them have sold out in the entertainment industry. And these are the people that have ended up running the world while Christians run around not caring about politics. And I think God is putting his foot down. He's through prophets, he's revealing that, hey, I want people that care about my kingdom to be impactful. I want to raise people's affluence so they will have more influence. And so there are investments that God has revealed through the prophetic. Many of them are crypto. But I've written a book on a guy named Kim Clement, who was a South African that came to America. He died a number of years ago, but he had amazing prophecies, and he was one of many who started talking about a wealth transfer about 25 years ago, a little bit, maybe 28 years ago. And I went from being a total that could not be to now I'm all in. And I will tell you that because I've believed in it, even though I wouldn't say the wealth transfer is fully started, I was a raving fan of precious metals, when they were in their 20s in American dollars. And
Mhm.
and it's I've been very well rewarded for my crazy views of the wealth transfer. So I have no regrets, but not everything has happened the way I thought it would. That's for sure. It's a little slower than I thought.
Well, that's the interesting part about the prophetic. I have found so my point of view is kind of like there's all these wealth strategies out there that work and this sort of stuff. You apply the principles. However, I've come to a point where going, Holy Spirit, what do you want? That's been my transformation through this whole process, because I'd rather be in the flow of what you're on, because that's more likely to reach 30, 60, 100-fold. In addition to, hey, it's a kingdom work here, as opposed to running around, because time's our biggest asset here, right? But the thing that's gotten me about the prophetic is the timing. That's the hard thing to pinpoint, because it seems like when God reveals something, it's like, it's now. It's going to happen now, but it may not happen for a number of years.
Well, I have always been super hungry for the prophetic. I'm going to say kind of a weird thing, because I know that this is not everybody goes to church. So here's one of my things I think about the prophetic. I think many people have an unusual affiliation towards money. There's a continuum. Some people don't care. There's also people who have an affiliation towards spiritual things. And in my opinion, you're made with a desire. And what I found I was in the church, but I was in a non-prophetic church. But I found myself attracted to extra, maybe the dark things. I was kind of attracted to the dark things. And I I had an upbringing that taught me that I shouldn't be fascinated with that, but I found myself fascinated with that. And so I think that when people are fascinated like that, I never pursued it to a deep degree, but I think that's, in my own experience, that's showing that God made you with an appetite for more than what you can see. And I
Mhm.
think it's something that we should feed, but I think we need to be very careful. It's like you can eat junk food or you can eat real food. And I think that I want to be on the biblical side. I don't want to be on the Luciferian side. But I was attracted in general to just the supernatural. And then about 6 or 7 years ago, I've been mentored and went to school and have learned a lot. And now I have a lot of prophetic experiences. And so it is odd, though, how I don't think God's very concerned about timing of stuff. So I've had a lot of prophetic encounters that have happened years ago that are only now coming true. So
Mm.
I think God would have a far different opinion on time than you and I.
Yes.
Let's be honest. We're
He's
looking at a bigger
outside it.
picture. Yeah, very much so. You've just said something very interesting, though, because I want to talk about the wealth side of things here, because for my mind and my experience, and certainly earlier in my life, I was rather financially successful, did very well, and I was very much attracted to what I would now consider the darker things, okay, in a different concept or context, actually, in this particular case. But now I look at wealth very differently. Now I see it as a means to freedom that actually allows me more time to experience more of the intellectual, more of the spiritual.
you know what? Okay, so I mean, it's kind of weird. I'm pretty candid with what I make, but I do far better than I would ever thought. And I'll tell you how I did it. And then, but I want to tell you I'm a little disappointed in how happy I am by having far more money than I ever thought I would. I built one of the biggest self-storage facilities. I think it's kind of popular, but not nearly as popular in Australia as it is in the US. Because in Canada, it's not really that popular either. But like in my little town of 50,000, there's probably 20 different self-storage, mini storage facilities in my town of 50,000 where I live. And and then I also have a small apartment complex that I built. So I built both facilities. But what I've learned after now I've been poor more years of my life than I've been rich. But I got rich and then I lost it all as a home builder. And then I got mad and I thought, man, I lost all this money. I was making in 2005, 2006, I made um 600,000 US back in 2000, I guess 2006, 2007, I made 600,000. It was way more than I ever dreamed I would. And then when I lost it, I had to go back and I didn't even make minimum wage. I had to borrow money to survive because you cannot survive on minimum wage. And then I built it back up and God helped me. But I sat in my self-storage business and I couldn't even make a full payment. So I was losing money. I had a negative amortization I was able to arrange with because I had some private financing. And but the guy trusted me and he believed me. And I built the business and I kept making it bigger. I had a lot of land. I just couldn't get a loan to build the buildings on the land. So I had only built some. Anyway, when I became, and I don't know, what's funny? I would love to talk about money, more often. I love to talk about God, but when you become rich, you might become rich with the number you have in somebody else's mind. But when you start experiencing 500,000 a year, you don't really think that that's rich. And then you're making 800,000 a year, then you make 1 million a year. And you're thinking, how do people live, on 100,000 a year? Because you don't think that you're extravagant. And we don't spend, but what we make and what we control. But what I've learned is all that money does is gives you options. You have all kinds of options when you have money, but I don't enjoy spending like lots of money. I like to drive nice cars. I like to live in a nice house. I don't eat fancy food. I go places, but I don't go first class. I haven't bought a first class flight, and I could probably fly private, but I don't know. It's just a funny thing. So I'm just talking about all kinds of stuff.
So what do you think is the purpose of money then? Because you could live a more extravagant lifestyle. And I love what you said there, because I think that's a temptation. Earlier in the interview, you said that there's a lifestyle creep. I've seen that as people increase income comes in, that their spending increases and they're not actually building wealth or retaining it. It's slipping through their fingers. But what do you think is the purpose of money? Because I think if you have a right purpose in your money, that determines your purchasing.
Well,
forward.
Money is a nice thing, and as a Christian, we should think that. But I will tell you, it's a horrible god. If you try to serve it, it's a horrible master. There's no joy. I always meet richer people. I'm wealthier than I ever thought I would be or could be. But then there's so many people who have so much more than I do. So if I thought that if I believe the lie, and there's so many lies that we believe and they ruin our life, and we have lies about money, we have lies about sex, we have lies about relationships, we have lies about lies. We think that we can lie and it's not going to really matter. I mean, there's so many things so I think that money is a great servant, but it's a horrible master.
Agreed. And I think the people who they live their life to serve those almighty dollars, they lose sight of what it's all about. And yes, it should, that money should be working for you. It should be working for giving you the lifestyle that you want, or for that matter, the freedom to do what you like, or for that matter, to provide a legacy for those you love.
Well, and what I think that this wealth transfer is about is, I think that evil people have been using money in very generous and intentional ways to bring the culture to the point that they have. And I think that God is saying, enough. I'm going to instill enormous amounts of money into those people who will believe what I show them, and I'm going to give them insight into investments. I'm going to show them cryptos. I'm going to show them that currencies are going to revalue just like they have. Nobody studies that. They don't know it, but it has happened. And I think we're right on the edge in a number of, and so there's these different ways that people can make money. And I think that God wants, obviously, we know, even with a very limited church attendance, generosity is an important part of the kingdom of God, and God is looking for people who will invest with his heart. I've never seen anybody that needed money and they just pray and they just go dig and there's gold in that, under that tree, it's always people. The way that God works is he motivates people to work with other people and invest in their dreams. And so I think that there's been evil people who've had extra money and the world has gone to a darker place. And I think it's coming to a place where more and more godly people are going to come into tremendous amounts of money. And I think it's going to be shocking what happens, and it will be amazing as well.
It's incredible. I mean, it's not sustainable, the current financial system, because you look at the US debt at the moment, your interest rate alone exceeds the military expenditure per year, right? So it's not sustainable. You've got geopolitically, we're watching the US and the world at cross point, where it's been prophesied by other prophets that we're also getting a new financial system, and you've got political regimes being overthrown. We've seen what's happened to Mandini in Venezuela. We've seen what's happened in Iran at the moment. I know you have a particular interest in a neighboring country there with their currency. We've got prophecy saying that different political leaders will be taken out, arrests will be happening. We're seeing borders change. We've seen some nations go back to the gold standard. I mean, Russia, what it did with the sanctions when it came on, putting the gold, the ruble back onto the gold standard, 5,000 rubles is 1 ounce of gold.
Derek, let me say this now. I'm going to kind of poke a little bit, but look at the unfortunate situation that Australia finds itself in with petrol, because
Yes.
because they wanted to save money, and so we're just going to trust other countries with our refineries, and we're going to believe, I'm going to say, since this is a free channel, we're going to
Go for it.
believe the lie that green energy is a great thing. That let's be real. There's people that worship green energy, and
They do worship it.
I'm about clean water, clean air, but let's science is on the side of the truth, and we've believed a lie about green energy. I'm seeing enormous it's just falling apart over here, especially with wind energy. I think solar is, but with the price
Okay.
of silver skyrocketing. So anyway, there's
Can I interrupt you for just a moment there? Sorry, Larry, just for one moment on that front. Edge actually sponsored Megan Lapp to come to Australia very recently to do. And Megan's an expert when it comes to wind turbines and the American experience, because I am absolutely dead against it. I don't consider them anything but money laundering. Okay,
it is.
That's what it is. That's exactly what it is. You can paint it whatever color you like. It is simply money laundering. And when we do have, there's a cult mentality over here in Australia where our politicians very much believe that, because they're stuck in this bubble. They live in this little place called Canberra where they don't know what's going on.
Well, it's all about votes.
It's all about buying votes, buying votes. Absolutely. So, no, it's the green cult is a big issue. I completely agree with you. And I think that it's very important to get people using the grey matter, thinking about things and just go, hang on. If this is so wonderful, why does it not work without subsidies? Why is it completely? Because if it was successful, entrepreneurs would be all over it.
Well, I've recently done a deep dive into it, and the level of the capital stack that's required to finance those things and the contracts. So here, I'll just tell you, I live in Washington State, which is a very left-leaning green thing, and there's carbon taxes in our state and everything, and so it's I don't like it, but they've got all these windmills, and I started looking at how they have to finance them. There's like 10 or 12 levels of finance, and when I drive through these big piles of them, because they've been building them for 25 years here, I'm realizing that so many of them are broken. And so I started talking to people who work in energy, and this is the deal. They no longer will disclose the contracts. They're not clear anymore because they break so often. And if they start failing, so they're literally putting them alongside our biggest river, which I live right next to the Columbia River. And it's the biggest hydro river in the Western United States by far. And it's a total, there's so many lies, but they won't even disclose what they pay because they have to make money. They have to carry the debt, and they will not even disclose the amount. It's actually, they've judicially covered it so you cannot find out. I think they're probably paying 15 to 20 times what it's worth, because if the bond system started falling in one state, it would fall across the country and then around the world, and they have to keep this lie going. So that's my opinion.
So it's interesting because if you bring that back to Kim Clement and what you've written about, he talked about the big E, and we're getting a whole different energy system. And so you see that collision of energy, which is so economically focused, because the economy, without energy, we can't get goods from A to B.
That's right.
And then you've got this collision of a financial system that is not sustainable, and it looks like new ones are coming through. Even with the Clarity Act and the Genius Act that's being debated in the United States at the moment, you're seeing all of this converge all at once. I mean, for me, this is an incredibly exciting time. This is where generational wealth can be happening. We're not just talking 100 years, we're talking generations. Larry, what's your spin on it? What is going on in the broader picture of things?
Well, I've believed in conspiracy theories, but let me just put some conspiracy theories out there. I think that our government, and I think your government does it probably as well, but I don't know as much, but there's been all these technologies in America. When I was a young man, like I was 12 years old, there's a guy who said, "Hey, I've got a car that I converted and made the car run on water. And Ford said, I want to buy it. He's like, no, I'm not selling it. I'm going to make this public. And, well, then that guy dies. Then there's another guy who does something else. And, so literally I've found out that the government legally can, in the name of security or secrecy, they've kept these patents. And I think that there's been secret patents. Well, Kim Clement is a prophet, and he prophesied about 5 different kinds of new fuel that's going to come. But do you know, Derek, he also prophesied about cars that didn't have wheels. There's no rubber that touches the ground. And now I'm like, when I first read that, I thought that's the craziest thing ever. But now I've read more about Tesla, and I think that we have intentionally not been allowed to think the truth. I think our government has used the media to brainwash us so we don't understand what really is going on. And so I think that God is revealing investments that will be absolutely amazing. I'm going to say one, because this is a crazy thing. So Kim Clement talked about these 8 wells. You mentioned them. One of them is called the oak tree. When I wrote the parable of the dinar, I'm like, what in the world does oak tree mean? I cannot understand it. But there's this reference to like multiple investments that watch the oak tree. I didn't know what it was. I absolutely know what it is now. Do you know what it is, Derek?
I personally think it's related to Tesla. The oak tree represents Elon through the Hebraic word.
The Hebrew word for oak tree is Elon.
Yeah. No way.
Yep.
Yeah. And
this is very strange to me. And I'm just going to interrupt once again, very, very quickly, because you've just said before about the fact, okay, that Larry's coming to Perth and the alignment of things. The universe is a very strange thing.
God is a mysterious God.
Absolutely.
Let's give credit where credit's due.
Yeah, completely randomly. What am I watching at 2:00 last night? 2 a.m. What am I watching? I'm watching a documentary about the gentleman who was murdered for the fact that he was running cars on water. There you go.
Yeah. Well, so Kim Clement is talking about new energy that's coming. Our government is talking about extraterrestrial technology. They're starting to release it. I'm sure that it's, talked about in some circles over there. And I think that all these things are going to come out, that we've been living. Talk about a reformation. There's going to be an energy reformation. There's going to be an educational reformation. I mean, AI is going to change everything. So I think things are going to change, and I think God is not going to allow evil to control at this point the world. I think we're going to come into a fantastic reformation that will be amazing.
And so much of that matches with the way Trump is negotiating right now for rare earths. In every international deal, what does he want? He wants rare earths. He's doing that with the Russians. He's doing that with Ukrainians. Mm-hmm. He's done that with Australia. He wants rare earths. That's got to give you a lot of signals. And of course, the amount of investments, the billions and trillions of dollars is going into America to avoid the tariffs, which is so clever.
Sure.
So clever economically. But it all has to do with AI and where all that's going. And so it's really fascinating. There's a theory, Larry, I'm sure you've heard it, where the technology, the military is probably 50 years ahead of where we are at right now technologically. Sure. So if we're just coming into AI now, can you imagine what they've got in their arsenal right now?
No, it's totally it's totally shocking. You know what's interesting? Well, I don't know if I should say this, but
Larry, there are things where I'm watching you hold yourself back, and I'm like, yeah, I think I know where he's going with this. I know we think so much alike. So, what do we do here, Aaron? Do we take this self-censorship off, or what do we do here?
I don't think you should censor yourself at all, Larry. Okay, do not hold back. Look, as you've seen in the corner here, we have the good man here looking over us and protecting us, so everything's fine.
Well, I have a weird theory about our president. And I know that our president is hard for people. Most countries don't like him. And they think he's arrogant. And they think, but I will tell you something. I do not think he's self-serving. And I'm very encouraged I think that you're going to see a freedom that's going to come to Canada, and it will make the Aussies very jealous, because I think our relationship and the freedom that's going to come, you guys are kind of isolated, but like, I have a lot of friends in Canada. I go up to Canada a few times every year, and they are really, really hurting with the leadership that they have. It's a green energy, centered leadership. I mean, it really literally is a religion. Let's just be
Larry,
real.
here's where we differ. We don't have leadership at all. Honestly, we have one of the weakest, most pathetic human beings. Honestly, he's a complete invertebrate. I don't know what's holding him up. Maybe a pop stick. It's a bit like your Biden years, right? Okay, where you had weekend at Biden's. Well, I don't know. Our prime minister's he's a little bit more mobile, but just the rubbish that comes out and the complete destruction of this country. Literally, he's the most destructive prime minister I can ever think of. Certainly in my
Did
memory.
you have a woman during COVID? Because I know New Zealand did, but is this the same one?
That was New Zealand.
No, yeah, that's New Zealand. No, she was special. Absolutely, yeah. Jacinta Ardern, who was looking after New Zealand, and the damage she has done to that country, it will take generations to recover from. Sadly, she's actually come and started living in the suburbs of Australia.
I think, Larry, the commonality we have with Canada is that we're in the Commonwealth, and so what's really fascinating with everything that you're talking about is, I'm watching the royal family, because what happens to them not only has implications for what happens in England, UK, but happens across the world for the entire Commonwealth.
Okay.
And so if that, let's say, hypothetically speaking,
yes,
that there is exposures that goes on with the royal family, hypothetically speaking, that something would happen that would undermine the authority that the royal family had,
Andrew,
that has massive wave effect across the globe in that respect.
It's time for them to fall, to be absolutely frank.
Every kingdom has fallen, and they have an amazing dynasty, but I think that the best days of Australia are in the future. And I think that they will be different. And I believe that for America. I believe it for Canada. But it's fascinating what, we don't know what Trump's doing either. But it's amazing what he's done. But basically what he's showing is the rest of the world is that globalism is dying. That every country should, just like every person should, look out for themselves. God never said love other people more than you love yourself. He said love your neighbor as yourself. And globalism is a really dumb idea, and he's making it look like foolery. And I think that people are going to start. You guys have such amazing resources, and I think that you're so well positioned for the future. I got to tell you one thing that's just so interesting. I did not know this until 2 days ago. Do you know that America, since Trump, you're talking about all these investments, that now for the first time in 26 years, we're making more steel than Japan?
I did not know.
2026. I think that probably we are doing way better behind the scenes. And this is recently what I've come to the conclusion. I've been believing what the media has been saying instead of, because I don't know everything that's going on. But can you believe that we've gone from really not even, we're just a joke? And you guys have so much metals and stuff, but I think that you're limited, in my estimation, because of a green energy mentality. And if you were released, the ally that you would be you are very powerful anyway, but when you guys need to take back your own petroleum.
Larry, there is right now in Australia, and certainly it's just happened over the weekend as well, a very significant political move has happened here, where one of our centre-right, slightly more right political parties has actually won a very significant seat and has really changed the game. So we're seeing the same sort of thing. It's just happening slower because of the fact that in Australia, our press is so powerful. Like in Western Australia, I will say I say this all the time, and I feel very comfortable in saying it. There is no democracy in Western Australia. Okay, our state government is chosen by one man, a guy by the name of Kerry Stokes, because he has a monopoly of the media over here. He has complete control, and therefore the narrative, when people go and they cast their vote, they're casting his vote because they've spent the last 12 months doing the propaganda and doing it very, very well. Unfortunately, right across Australia as a nation, our media has far too much control of people's minds. They do own the population in such a big way. And something I said before, and I'll say it again, the greatest thing about Australia is its apathy, and the worst thing about Australia is its apathy. So that she'll be right attitude. Unfortunately, when you've got a media who feeds that and feeds you the information, it takes a long time, and that's why independent media is so important.
It's so important. I mean, it is so important there's people who are probably so mad that I've said what I've said, but if it's true, then consider it. You know, I respect Australia. I love everything that I know about Australia, but I'm just so shocked by what I think that is going on with Australia is what Trump has done is he's basically fighting China while looking like he's supporting them because he closed down the canal, the Panama Canal first, and then he took out Maduro, who happens to run and his previous dictator before him started the biggest Dominion software, the biggest electronic vote counting software in the world that I think you guys use a derivative of.
We don't use it. No.
And I think that's going to be, I will tell you, I'm just going to tell you a crazy thought because we're just, I don't know, I mean, I think that you're going to see Donald Trump have rules for this election that will be different than America has been able to vote in 30 years. We're not going to have delayed voting. I don't believe we're going to have voting machines. All the votes have to be counted the night of the election. Everything it's going to go back to about 1940 with the technology, paper ballots, and the Democrats are going to get annihilated because we're going to really find out what a fair vote looks like. And I swear that your country and 50 other countries in the world will go, holy crap, now we know how they've been doing it here. We need their help. And I think that there's going to be a revolution that goes around the world after they see what happens, because we're told one thing with the media and the press, and the reality is so far different. That's what I think.
Goliath has been in the United States. And I've said to Aaron a number of times, the Goliath has to come down for the splash effect that happened around the rest of the world, because Americans are very, very aware of the Bill of Rights, the right to free speech, right to bear arms, and what they can and can't say. And as Americans, you see that the way they carry themselves, even in Australia, right? Their expectations are a different level. And this is what the globalists have feared, because they have to get inside and infiltrate. Now, the US has been too hard to infiltrate from the outside. They've had to get inside. Now, we've seen this strategy play out in a number of countries, Larry, where migration is happening.
Right.
Or illegals, right? You guys have had that with the border issues on both sides, I would argue, not just in the South, but on the North as well.
Oh, absolutely.
And we're watching this in England. We're seeing this in Wales. We're seeing it in Australia as well. Where and this is bringing it back to biblical prophecy. Funny enough, you remember that one in Daniel, the book of Daniel, where it says the iron and clay is the last kingdom. You cannot mix iron and clay. And we've got
Daniel
this
2 verse. Yeah.
And we've got
that's the most fascinating. I love that.
The classic. We've got this cross of different cultures that just cannot mix in ideologies. And this has been the thing that I think the globalists are trying to disrupt and do is try to get in with this saying.
Let's look at what's just happened in the UK over the weekend as well. Let's look at the entire spectrum in the UK has changed over the last few hours. It really has. Again, the everyday person is being heard, because now these tricks, the importing of votes, the cultural destruction, people are now aware of it. And the thing is, they've been letting it happen. It's been slowly boiling that frog for a very long time. But right now, people are now waking up. Now, I thank COVID for this. The fact of the matter is COVID woke up so many people to what's actually going on, and the globalist agenda and the wealth, exactly what we're talking about, the wealth transfer here. Well, I think, in my opinion, COVID was what that was all about.
Oh,
but I
absolutely.
think we flipped it the other way. We're flipping it the other way.
Well, you know what is so crazy is, Nick, you guys follow Nick Shirley too, right?
I don't personally know.
No.
Oh, okay. Well, he's a guy that got over 1 billion views when he went into our Minnesota, where all the Somali daycares were. So
Yeah,
that's Nick
I
Shirley.
love him.
So last week he went into Cuba, and he basically got really scared because they were following him around, and he left very quickly. But he showed the world with only millions, not hundreds of millions like he did in Somalia, that Cuba is a failed socialism. Does not work. You can't show me where it works. I've been to Cuba twice. I love the people of Cuba. They're amazing, but their society is a wreck. They're so poor. They make like $12 to $15 a month. And so they all do all these side things. But I've been to Venezuela, and I was there when Chavez was like 4 years in and then 6 years in. And it just dive bombed the more that he pushed it. And now with Maduro, it's 16 or 18 years since capitalism has left. But what we're seeing is that socialism doesn't work, and yet our kids are raised, and kids in school now are said, you've got to be a globalist, that capitalism doesn't work. Well, we don't have true capitalism anymore, but socialism is what really doesn't work. And so the whole world is changing, and Trump is bringing about that change. And I don't think he's trying to enrich himself. I think he wants, I loved, did you see how Ukraine and Russia have stopped fighting now? And I just saw before I came on the show that some of the gangsters who were probably manipulating an enormous amount of the funds that the U.S. had given to Ukraine were just arrested. Do you know that the FBI just arrested a bunch of Ukrainian gangsters?
I haven't seen that, but wow.
You know what I'm just thinking during what you've just said about all of those different places? Some people are more, what is it? Some people are more equal than others, right? The quote from, is it Animal Farm? Socialism, communism does not work. Yeah. We are not all cut from the same cloth.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting that you bring that up too, Larry, because what's happening in Europe, massive shakeup between how America relates to Europe. This is what we've seen, like when Vance got up there and said what he said in front of NATO at the beginning of 2025. Yeah. All the Europeans are in tears, at the end of the conference, like, America's not going to protect us anymore.
That's right.
And Trump's going, we've been paying the bill. When are you going to pay your share? Because you're not going to come to our rescue if we get in trouble.
Correct.
Fair argument, right? Fair argument. And I think that this is the whole thing about, we're seeing you're talking about socialism. This is where it's come from, these globalist ideas. And yet now they're getting caught so much because they haven't been productive for how long? They've been on the green energy front. Economically, they are in trouble. They rely on the Russians for their energy to keep them warm during the winter. And now they're stuck in this space of, we've relied on all these ally agreements. These ally agreements are getting disrupted now. What is Europe going to do?
Well,
and Trump is smart because he negotiates with each country individually, Larry. That's what rather than the EU as a collective. Yeah. That's what's been fascinating to watch from our perspective. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, the one thing I think is so interesting is I'm really enjoying getting to talk to you guys, and I appreciate you having me on the show. And I don't know that we're going the direction you would have thought it would have gone, but we, as people who care about other people, we need to have mastery of money, but we need to be able to engage in geopolitical conversation. We need to be educated and have an opinion, even if we're wrong. But we should, when you discuss ideas like this, you find out things. I'll just tell you the craziest thing. I was watching, I don't really prefer Donald Trump Jr., Trump's son, his oldest son. But he said such an interesting thing about, because Trump had requested between Putin and Zelensky, will you guys have a ceasefire? And so Donald Trump Jr. was just last month in Monaco, And he said, there's so many supercars, it's just unbelievable. But he goes, the craziest thing to me is 1 in 3 of them have a Ukrainian license plate on it. He goes, it's obvious to me, I've never been there, so I don't know, but it's obvious. What he said, it's obvious to me there's a whole lot of illicit money that flies in to Ukraine and they bring it out over here. And he goes, this is the craziest thing, that a third of these supercars are Ukrainians.
Well before this conflict, well before, and I'm not saying I told you so, but I've often said Ukraine is literally the world's laundry. All right. And it has been since the end of the USSR. It's so clear. And obviously that's why they installed a useless idiot in the place with Zelensky, an actor. I mean, a perfect posse there to pop in that position.
Well, this is what's got me is like, who decided that Russia was bad and Ukrainian was good in this conflict? Because you don't just wake up one day and decide I'm going to go to war, right? And this was what bugged me, because anybody who questioned that narrative was like, oh, what are you doing? You're disrupting things. It's like, no, think about it. You know, if 2 kids are fighting, right?
Yep.
You got to find out what's your side of the story. Now, what's your side of the story, and make a decision from there. This is basically what's been going on over there.
Yeah, but you're wrong here, and I'll tell you why you're wrong. Because you're using intelligence. Okay, you can't be doing that. It's not valid in this argument. But because we're about feelings now. Okay, and we're all about virtue signaling. It's all about being fake.
But when you're spending billions of dollars from America and billions of dollars from Australia for one side, you're going, well, who decided they're right and who's wrong? And this is what's been getting me. And this is what came out. And Larry, I'm not sure if you heard of this, but the biolabs that were in Ukraine,
yes,
I heard about it.
US funded biolabs. Can you blame Putin for being a little concerned about that, particularly with the technology that they have these days in terms of launching missiles?
Yeah. Well, the whole thing, but I think it's so important for people, for Christians, for people who care about other people, to care about politics. All these good people have just thought, oh, don't go into entertainment if you're a Christian, and don't go into media, and sure don't go into government. They're just horrible people. Well, I think that we should be very concerned about governance. I don't know if politics is kind of a slimy, stinky thing, and I don't really like it, but governance is so important, and the right balance of freedom. Everybody loves freedom. Everybody loves freedom.
Larry, you've actually concerned me greatly with what you've just said, because I'm involved in entertainment, media, and politics.
Good for you.
Oh, dear.
How did you, Larry? I mean, we could talk all day. I'm conscious of the time, but Larry, how did you come from? Because you were an assistant pastor at one point, right?
Yeah, I was. Yeah.
How did you break out of that mindset of others and culture where you're anti? They don't want to talk about prophecy. They don't want to talk about finance of all things. And you then went on to make millions. How did you get through those cultural expectations?
Well, I'll tell you, it was a weird path, but how it happened is I was very socially maladapted as a young person. And I asked my first, girl on a date at 16, and she said no. So I didn't have the confidence again until I was 19 to ask again. I just did not. I was very well adapted through 5th grade, but then in junior high, everything went south for me, and I was bullied, and I lost all my confidence, and I didn't believe, and I came to, and that's where God really kind of met me, because I thought, God, nobody likes me in the world, but when I read your Bible, you love me, you made me, and so I'm either going to believe what they say about me, or I'm going to believe what you say about me. And so then at 13, I decided that I'm going to believe what God says. And he says, like, fear of man will prove to be a snare, but whoever trusts in the Lord will be kept safe. But like, people did not like me. Nobody respected me. So it's been easy for me to disregard what people say. And so I don't live to make other people happy. And there's a lot of freedom in that. And so I've just learned, I didn't really come into having confidence in being myself, but I decided about 35, or 40, I really enjoyed who I was. And so I became more and more, I didn't want to be critical of other people, but I just would, say what I was really thinking. And I found that's the best way to live. I do want to do, Derek, like you said, you want to listen to God and be led by God. One of the weird things as a Christian person, I realized I've tried to, unfortunately, do a lot of things for God instead of doing things with God. And I think it's a whole next level that God is inviting us to do things with him, not just for him. And that's a lot higher level of relationship. But that's kind of my condensed story there.
You're coming to Perth. What's your message going to be? You're speaking at a number of places, which we'll reveal in a moment. But what's your message going to be?
Well, the craziest thing is that after lots of study, I believe that God is looking for people of integrity and character and faith that want and feel like they have a destiny in their life to come into much more money, because God is showing a section of his church about how Kim Clement, who I've studied immensely, I've still been studying him. I've studied hundreds and hundreds of hours, and he died in 2016. And so it's kind of interesting. It's like, I think maybe, and I don't know, it's an odd statement, but I don't think God wanted him to screw it up. So many people don't finish well. So he died at an early age, kind of, I think, in his 50s. And he has a really great history, and his ministry has just thousands of his prophecies and his teachings are all digitally recorded. So you can do a word search on what he said. But he said, he's one of the crazy arguments that, like, he could hear God and he would say it. And God said to him, Kim, I want my people in the kingdom to be billionaires, but 99% of them can't fathom it, Kim. So I'm going to have to make them millionaires for those who will invest, for those who will, those people of faith who will start businesses and invest in these different things. But I was so shocked. And that's really where the title of the most recent book I was helped write with Lauren Atkinson, The Rise of Kingdom Billionaires. But I literally believe repeatedly Kim Clement talked about, I'm looking for, because look who's changed the world in the last 20 years. It's the Bill Gates, it's the Elon Musk, it's the billionaires. There's only a couple thousand of them in the world, and they've had the biggest impact. Well, I don't think it's going to be, and they're all secular. You can't hardly show me what I would call a kingdom billionaire. Well, I think that's going to change.
So good. All right. Well, Larry is appearing around Perth Sunday, the 17th of May at One Church Perth service at 9:30. On Monday, the 18th of May, he's at the Kingdom Initiatives at 7:30 that night. I beg your pardon, 6:30 at night, Menorah Church in Nollamurra, 114. And then on Wednesday, the 20th of May, CRC Wangara in the evening at 7. On Thursday, the 20th of May, he's in Mandurah at KI Mandurah at 6:30. On the Saturday, he is going to be in North Perth, and then another venue on the Sunday, the 24th. You're getting around and working your hard, Paul, there, Larry. I want to say this before you go. Guys, if you haven't heard about this wealth transfer, this is a great introduction to do that. You might want to grab one of Larry's books, either The Parable of the Dinar, The Stewarding the Wealth Transfer, a study on Kim Clement's 8 Wells, or grab The Rise of Kingdom Billionaires. You can grab them on Amazon. Larry, is there any last words you want to say?
I will say that let's talk about two of the things that Kim Clement prophesied about. He prophesied about precious metals. And precious metals in the last year have just ripped. I mean, unfortunately, they're down from the price they were 4 months ago, but I think that they're rising again. He also, in my opinion, prophesied about XRP, which I know that you would know a lot about. There's a famous story here in America of they had Bitcoin before they had exchanges, and you couldn't buy into the exchange. But there's a famous story of a guy who's about my age who paid 10,000 Bitcoin for 2 takeout pizzas. Have you heard that story?
Yeah.
And so, if Bitcoin gets to 100,000, he paid $1 billion, for these two pizzas. So he's like the biggest, idiot. But within 6 months of that happening, Kim Clement said, I see an investment that's going to be very strong for my kingdom, people in my kingdom. It starts with the X, it ends with the P. I can't tell if it's got one or two letters in the middle. But so Christian people who have believed that prophecy have been very strong advocates of XRP. And I think it's going to be great. One other thing that we might talk about sometimes, and this is a great thing that, maybe next time we'll talk about it, but we'll probably be more focused next time. But what do you do when you come into millions of dollars? It's a thing I've studied, and it's a thing I'm very opinionated, and people really need to know what to do, because I had the luxury. I'll tell you this last thing. My brother was a professional basketball player in the NBA. Two of his boys are playing in Europe right now. So he played 13 years professional basketball. Wow. So he is the one who gave me 12,000 US dollars when I was 30 years old. And so that was 33 years ago. And now I'm worth tens of millions of dollars because I started doing that. But between my brother and I, we've become rich 5 times. So that means we've each lost it. I've lost it once. He's lost it a couple times. And so when you have somebody that's that close to you and you get to, it's like playing a video game, you start to learn, but it's really hard the first time. So I think that's a topic that we might talk about at one time, but I think it's a valid question for people, as for whether it's an inheritance or whatever else. It's an important skill to know how to skillfully hold on to money.
Larry's in the studio with us next week.
So I'm looking forward to that.
I'm going to have a ball. Larry, thank you so much. Safe travels over here to Australia. We're so looking forward to having you here. Guys, get on, have a look at where he's coming from and get that information. Have a look at his books there. It's well worth the small investment to get this level of wisdom.
Very small investment indeed.
Yeah.
Do not miss this. You've mentioned a couple of spots, which one where I think I might even pop in myself. So this is going to be fantastic. We will see you next week, Larry. Thank you, everybody, for being part of the Greater Wealth here on Edge Radio Australia.